Are you restless? Like, are
Yeah.
you sad,
Yeah.
anxious, or maybe just feeling kind of at a loss?
Yeah, and if you are, or if you're feeling lonely, the author of today's deep dive argues that it's not just modern stress.
Right. Not just burnout.
Exactly. He claims you are actually a, quote, wandering ghost whose soul has literally been homeless for, 10,000 years.
This is just a wildly aggressive diagnosis right out of the gate. But, I mean, that is the central thesis of this really provocative 2005 essay we're unpacking today.
Yeah, it's called Make a Home for Our Souls by an author named Shu Feng.
Right. And before we really get into the weeds here, we should probably set some ground rules for you listening.
Yeah.
Because this text makes some incredibly bold theological and philosophical claims.
Huge claims.
Yeah. And to be clear, our job today isn't to validate or, endorse his theology.
Right. We're not taking sides on his specific take on Christianity or Buddhism or secular philosophies.
Exactly. Or even his own unique frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
We are just putting on our hard hats, so to speak, to examine the architecture of this really striking worldview he's built.
And, the foundation of that architecture relies on a pretty radical reframing of how we view human life itself.
Hopefully.
The author asks you to look at your physical body, your whole secular day-to-day existence, as essentially a temporary hotel stay.
Like an Airbnb.
Right, like a really quick layover. He points out that human life is painfully limited. 100 years if you are incredibly lucky, right?
Yeah, basically a blip.
Exactly. But the soul's journey in his framework is infinite. Your soul has been traveling for tens of thousands of years.
I really want to linger on that hotel analogy for a second because the mechanics of it are just fascinating to me. Think about how we actually behave in hotels.
We definitely don't redecorate.
Right. We don't buy new furniture for a room we're staying in for 2 nights. We don't, rip up the carpets or invest our entire life savings into the wallpaper.
Right.
But the author is arguing that human beings do exactly that with our mortal lives.
We absolutely do.
We spend all of our energy acquiring wealth, status, and, just raw stress to decorate this tiny 100-year hotel room. And we completely ignore the fact that we have absolutely no permanent residence to go to when checkout time inevitably arrives.
Precisely. And if you accept that premise that your physical existence is just a brief stop on a 10,000-year trajectory, then the way you prioritize your daily energy, it has to change completely.
Right.
And that brings us right back to those opening symptoms, right? The anxiety, the restlessness.
Yeah, because modern society has a very specific vocabulary for those feelings, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
We call it a quarter-life crisis.
Yeah.
Or burnout.
Yeah.
And we treat it with therapy, medication, or just, doom scrolling for hours.
Doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Shifen just strips away all that clinical vocabulary. He says, no, you aren't just stressed about your mortgage. Your soul is fundamentally untethered.
Right.
You're a wandering ghost without a spiritual anchor.
Okay, wait, hold on, because I want to push back on where the author takes this next. He makes a massive leap here.
Pretty big leap, yeah.
We go from feeling a bit anxious about our jobs to the text issuing this incredibly stark warning. It says, if you don't find a spiritual home, you will ultimately just, quote, report to the king of hell.
Yeah.
How does he bridge that massive gap between modern anxiety and literally eternal damnation?
Well, it's intense, right? But it actually makes sense within the internal logic of his architecture.
Okay, how so?
The king of hell here acts as a metaphor for the ultimate state of unprotected chaos. Think about it this way. If you are a wandering ghost, you have no protector. You have no guide.
Right.
So when your 100-year lease on your physical body expires, you are thrust out the door. And if you haven't secured a permanent spiritual residence, you are instantly swallowed by the chaotic void of the universe.
Wow.
Yeah. The king of hell represents the terrifying reality of just having nowhere to go when the ultimate checkout time arrives.
Okay, so it's not necessarily like a guy with a pitchfork in a lake of fire.
Exactly.
It's the absolute terror of eternal displacement, which definitely raises the stakes.
Wow.
You aren't just feeling a bit down. Your eternal trajectory is in severe jeopardy.
Exactly.
So if we need a structural shelter for the soul to avoid that, unprotected chaos, what does the author actually accept as a legitimate home?
Well, he is quite specific about what qualifies, and he starts with paths that are widely recognized, actually.
Right, what?
For example, he states that if you know Jesus and you trust him with all your heart, following his words completely, then you're saved. Jesus functions as a structural home for the soul.
He also brings up Buddhism, right?
He does, yeah.
He says, if you know Shakyamuni the Buddha and you practice, recite, and explain the Diamond Sutra to others, then you have a home. But I gotta say, I struggled with this initially.
Why is that?
Well, how does reciting a text provide structural shelter for a soul?
Ah, okay. That requires looking at how the Diamond Sutra actually functions for a practitioner.
Right.
The sutra is fundamentally about cutting through the illusions of the material world, essentially realizing the hotel room isn't permanent.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. By deeply internalizing and teaching that specific text, the author argues you are building a cognitive and spiritual fortress. The principles become the walls that protect your consciousness from the chaos.
That's fascinating. So it's not just words, it's an architectural framework for your mind.
Exactly. It creates a space you can actually inhabit mentally.
Okay, that makes sense. But then the author pivots.
He does.
He says, okay, if you aren't familiar with Jesus or you don't deeply resonate with Shakyamuni, do you know what thing?
Right, introducing himself in the third person.
Yeah, he introduces himself as the founder of something called Lifechanyuan.
Yes. And Lifechanyuan translates roughly to a sort of life Zen garden or like a spiritual oasis.
Okay.
It is presented in the text as a new era's community and philosophical framework. It's offered as a very literal, alternative spiritual home for the modern era, leading ultimately to what he calls the greatest creator.
And we should probably define the greatest creator here.
We definitely should.
Because in the context of this essay, it isn't just a generic bearded guy sitting on a cloud.
Right, exactly. In Shofeng's framework, the greatest creator is the ultimate, non-denominational architect of the universe.
Right.
It is the absolute pinnacle of existence, the true, eternal homeland where a settled soul ultimately resides.
But this is where the author makes a rhetorical move that I just find incredibly fascinating, or maybe just incredibly strategic.
Oh, the distinction he makes.
Yes. He explicitly claims that he, Shuifeng, is not a home.
He creates a very strict boundary there between his own personhood and the destination he's pointing toward.
Think of reaching the greatest creator as trying to summit Mount Everest, right?
Yeah.
Shuifeng is basically saying, I am not the mountain.
Right.
He refers to himself merely as the tour guide of Lifechanyuan. It's like he's positioning himself as a Sherpa. He's the guy who claims to know the exact path up the treacherous mountain. He even claims he is surrounded by angels who will guide the tour group.
But he insists he isn't the final destination.
Exactly. And I found myself wondering, is this a moment of profound humility? Or is it a clever way to bypass a reader's natural skepticism?
Honestly, it's functionally a brilliant way to bypass skepticism.
You think so?
Well, absolutely. When a leader demands you worship them directly, modern people inherently raise their defenses. We are naturally suspicious of people claiming to be gods.
Right, it sets off alarm bells.
Exactly. But by lowering his own status from the destination to just the guide, he shifts the whole dynamic. He isn't asking for worship. He's offering a service.
He's offering a map.
He's offering a map, and in a world filled with anxious, wandering ghosts who are terrified of the king of hell, a reliable map is exactly what people are desperate to buy.
That makes total sense. But the catch is that the map only works if you follow it exclusively.
Yep, that's the catch.
Because once the author defines these very specific paths, Jesus, the Diamond Sutra, or his own Lifechanyuan guide service as the only legitimate homes, the text just relentlessly starts dismantling everything else you might try to rely on.
It really is a rigorous process of elimination. The text directly challenges the reader. It basically asks, if you don't believe in these spiritual homes, what are you actually building your life around?
Right.
And it starts by targeting secular materials, money, power, status.
Which goes right back to the hotel analogy. If you build your identity around your bank account, you are building a house out of, like, hotel
soap. Exactly.
You can't take it with you when you leave. But then he goes after massive ideologies, too.
Yeah.
He specifically mentions communism.
He does.
And he dismisses it outright by saying it is, quote, just a theory. Why does a theory fail as a home in this framework?
Because an intellectual abstraction offers no structural shelter for the soul. A theory can organize an economy, sure, or dictate how resources are shared in the material world, the hotel.
Right.
But it has zero jurisdiction over the soul's 10,000-year journey. You can't take shelter inside an idea when the spiritual storm actually hits.
Wow, that makes the next part even more intense.
Well, the part about family.
Yes. He targets our closest, most intimate human relationships. He asks if you believe in your ancestors, your parents, or your teachers. And he dismisses them with this remarkably blunt, almost chilling logic.
It is brutal.
He says they are just like you.
That might be the most psychologically distressing part of the entire essay.
Seriously.
Think about it. When we are children, our parents feel like a permanent structural home. They are the adults in the room. But the author strips that comfort away by pointing out that your parents and your grandparents are also just temporary travelers in their own hotel rooms.
It's the terrifying realization that there are literally no adults in the room.
Exactly.
If your soul is looking for eternal permanence, trying to anchor it to another terrified, wandering ghost is a recipe for
Yes.
disaster. It's just the blind leading the blind in the hotel lobby. Like, where are they possibly going to lead you?
Nowhere permanent. And then he aims at the intellectual pillars of modern society, the tools we use to understand our universe.
Right, science and philosophy.
Yeah. He brings up science, acknowledging it, but diminishing its spiritual value by calling it merely a tool to understand nature. Then he tackles philosophy, dismissing it as merely a way of thinking.
I really want to unpack the mechanism of this.
Yeah.
Because it feels like the author is saying that trying to find spiritual peace in science or philosophy is exactly like trying to live inside a hammer.
A hammer.
Yeah. Think about it. A hammer is an incredible tool. You need it to build a house, right?
Sure.
Science is an amazing tool. It explains the physics of how the rain falls. Philosophy is the blueprint. It helps you think about the meaning of the rain. But neither of them is a roof.
Right.
You cannot physically live inside a hammer to stay dry. The author is arguing that science and philosophy are functional, necessary tools for operating within the physical world, but they fundamentally lack the spiritual square footage for your soul to reside in.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. A tool is functional, but a home is structural. A tool helps you manipulate your current environment. But a home provides shelter, protection, and an ultimate sense of belonging. The tragedy of modern life, according to the author, is that we are all walking around clutching these beautiful, shiny hammers, wondering why we're still getting soaked in the rain.
That's so evocative. But wait, if wandering ghosts are so miserable and secular tools don't work, why don't more people just seek out these spiritual homes?
Well, the text argues that the spiritual marketplace itself is a terrifying minefield.
Okay, how so?
Because once he tosses out the secular stuff, he turns his sights on alternative spiritual paths. And he insists that exploring the spiritual realm without the exact right guide is incredibly dangerous.
He is quite vivid in his dismissals of competing philosophies, too. Take his critique of Lao Tzu, the foundational figure of Taoism.
Right.
The text claims Lao Tzu didn't make the truth clear. He just, quote, rode a black ox and left the Hangu Pass.
Basically saying he abandoned the tour group.
Exactly. The guy rode off on an ox and vanished into history, so where are you going to find him to guide you now? A guide who isn't present can't protect you from the void.
Exactly. The author is emphasizing the absolute necessity of an active, present guide. And then he moves on to the dangers of generic superficial worship.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
He warns that if you just blindly worship whatever god is popular or enter the wrong temple, you may never recover.
Wow.
Yeah, and he uses a very specific Chinese idiom to illustrate this. He says it's like a clay Buddha crossing a stream, hardly able to save itself.
I love that image. But let's break down how that actually applies to the listener's life today. What is a modern clay Buddha?
Well, a modern clay Buddha is superficial spirituality, or even toxic positivity.
Oh, interesting.
It's the aesthetic of self-help without the actual foundational work. If you have a statue of a Buddha made of unbaked clay, it looks perfectly legitimate sitting on your shelf when the room is calm, right?
Okay.
But the second you take it into a rushing river, which represents a genuine crisis, like a moment of profound grief or fear, the clay instantly dissolves into the water.
It just washes away.
Exactly. The author is warning that these corrupted or shallow spiritual paths lack true structural integrity. They can't even maintain their own form, let alone save your soul from drowning.
And he's equally unforgiving toward the Tao itself, the universal way.
He is, yeah.
The text admits that the Tao is technically a home. But immediately he pulls the rug out.
Right.
He warns that without a guide, if you try to find it on your own and make a tiny mistake, just a thousandth of a millimeter off course, you will end up with a, quote, bloody head.
A bloody head, yeah.
You cannot just blindly stumble toward the truth.
Finally, he addresses perhaps the most popular modern spiritual path of all, the highly individualized idea of just believing in yourself.
Right, the ultimate secular mantra, you are enough. Just believe in yourself.
And he dismantles it by asking a very probing question. He basically asks, who are you? He points out that if you try to define yourself using circular logic like, I am my father's son or I am my son's father, You haven't actually defined an independent, eternal self.
You're just defining yourself relative to other people.
Exactly. You are just pointing your finger back at other wandering ghosts.
Wow.
You are trying to anchor a ship to another ship that is also adrift. It provides zero permanent stability.
This creates a massive, almost overwhelming friction in the text.
What do you mean?
Think about the spiritual paradox the author has trapped you in. He tells you that you absolutely must find a home to escape being a miserable, wandering ghost, right?
Right.
The clock is ticking on your 100-year hotel stay, and the king of hell is waiting.
The stakes are incredibly high.
But simultaneously, he builds a giant, terrifying fence of anxiety around almost every available path.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Science is out, philosophy is out, communism is out, Lao Tzu rode away, the clay Buddhas will melt in the river, and if you try to find the Tao on your own, you're going to crack your head open. He demands that you explore, but insists that exploring without his specific map is terrifyingly dangerous.
It is a profound paradox, and rhetorically, it's a masterpiece of creating urgency.
It really is.
By highlighting the immense danger and the sheer number of traps on the journey, he exponentially increases the perceived value of the safe harbor he is offering.
That makes sense.
If the world is a minefield, the tour guide who knows where the mines are becomes the single most important person in your existence.
Absolutely.
He forces the reader into a psychological corner where the only logical safe move is to accept the guidance being offered by Lifechanyuan, or one of those few other approved paths.
So, we arrive at the author's final ultimatum. He speaks directly to you, the reader, the listener. He says, it's better to find a home early. Let your wandering soul settle down.
Right.
Give your spirit a permanent place to go before checkout time. And if you don't listen...
He says you can go ahead and wander around.
Yeah, but he leaves you with this chilling guarantee. When the time comes, when this life ends, you will be permanently homeless in the void.
If we step back and connect all these mechanics to the bigger picture, the text is fundamentally a profound challenge to how we allocate our limited energy.
Definitely.
In our daily lives, we are obsessively focused on the immediate, optimizing our careers, chasing status, ensuring our temporary comfort,
Decorating the hotel.
decorating the hotel room. But the author is urging us to drastically zoom out. He is asking us to prioritize the infinite destination over the temporary hotel. It is a striking call to stop being a distracted tourist in the universe and start searching for a permanent spiritual residence.
And that brings us to a final, lingering thought for you to mull over today, something that really builds the very premise of this text.
Okay.
We spent all this time discussing the symptoms of being a wandering ghost, right? The anxiety, the restlessness, feeling completely at a loss.
Right.
And the author claims that your soul has been searching for its ideal place for tens of thousands of years, while our human life is just a brief, flashing moment. If we entertain that framework for just a second, what if that deep, unexplainable restlessness we all feel sometimes, like in the quiet moments of the night, isn't actually anxiety about our modern lives?
Oh, wow.
What if it has absolutely nothing to do with our unread emails or our bank accounts or the chaotic news cycle? What if that heavy, sinking feeling in your chest is actually an ancient 10,000-year-old homesickness for a place you don't even consciously remember leaving?